Going back in the day now with Levi Roots. Thanks, Levi, for coming on here.
Nice to have me on.
I've sort of seen this script before. You was born in Jamaica.
Yes, Clarendon.
And you came here when you was 11 years old.
Yeah.
A few years ago, let's be honest.
Yeah, quite a few.
When you came here, what was your first impressions of this country?
Well, nobody had prepared me. I suppose it was the days of the Windrush generation, when people were coming over to sort of help after the war effects, and my parents was part of the Windrush generation. But nobody had prepared the kids. I was 10 at the time, just before I came. Wow. And nobody had prepared me for the cold, for instance. You know, obviously snow is not in Jamaica, and as a 10-year-old boy, running around having 3-mile radius of a garden, and my beautiful grandma looking after me, and then all of a sudden I had landed here, and then you had to face the things like racism and skinheads and everything, chasing, I want to rip your head off and all this kind of stuff. It was quite frightening at first, but it's good thing that my family was here for quite some years before, so it kind of prepared me for when I.
So we had Wilfred Emmanuel Jones on the show
good
last
old
week,
Wilfred.
and the one thing that he spoke about is these people coming from Jamaica back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. They were actually pioneers. They were brave people. They came for a fresh start and really quite brave to make that move halfway around the world. Yeah,
absolutely. And I suppose that, it was the start of that joining of people from the Caribbean and from other worlds coming to the UK. Because my parents was part of that. My mom came, she worked in the NHS. Yeah. She was a lab technician at King's College Hospital for many, many years. Yeah. My father worked in the local council. Yeah. So it was really, people were coming over and discovering themselves, but also that joining between black and white people. And then, of course, food and music became that reason.
Well, this is what I'm going to get on to now, is because I've had 3 Jamaicans on this show over the past year, and everyone's been brilliant at cooking. Why is that?
Well, I suppose, especially for young kids, I think everybody knows with me and my cooking experiences came from my grandma. Yeah. It was one way that the grandmothers who was looking after the kids while the mom and dads came to the UK was try to keep that family together, and food was an important structure. And it was for when Windrush generation came over, they used food and music. Of course, remember the times of ska music and everything was coming from the Caribbean coming over here. So music and food was an important tool for that integration between black and white people here in the UK.
Music and food, you speak in my language, Levi, so you know a little bit about music and reggae.
I do, yeah.
You used to play football with the late, great Bob Marley.
Absolutely, and I love talking about that, obviously. It was great. Bob was at the time was in exile here. He had just been shot in Jamaica, so he came over here and to record some of his iconic songs that he did. And he lived over in Chelsea. Yeah. And me and my band and the Sir Coxsone Sound System, we lived in Wandsworth. So it was a meeting of Bob Marley and the Wailers and Levi Roots and Coxsone Sound in Battersea Park every weekend to have a lovely kick around. And it was some of the most inspirational, times of my life. The man was an absolutely fantastic footballer. Bit of a sort of Maradona-esque type of a player, short, being able to hold on to the ball. And dare I say, if he wasn't a musician, I think he would have been a great footballer.
Wow. So you was raised as a Christian.
Yes.
And now you've converted to Rastafari.
Yes.
For the more ignorant amongst us, what is that?
Well, Rastafari was a way, I think it was started by Marcus Garvey, and Marcus Garvey is Jamaica's premier national hero. Yeah. And he was the one that was saying to, we had all these pictures of the white Jesus with the blue-eyed on black people's wall. Yeah. And Marcus Garvey was one of the guys that came around and says, look to Africa for someone that you can find an inspiration for. And it was the time when Emperor Haile Selassie was being crowned king. Yeah. And he was saying that if you want somebody to be inspired by, look for this great, black king who was just about to become an emperor. Yeah. And with him, you can find some inspiration. And I suppose a lot of people who was in Jamaica and disenfranchised at the time that couldn't work with the white blue-eyed Jesus. They thought that, we'll choose him as somebody to inspire us. And that's how the whole Rastafari culture started. And of course, when I was in school, I remember when I found out that my real name is Keith Valentine Graham.
Not Levi then?
Not Levi. And I used to look up Keith Graham and I just found out that it was a Scottish name. I kept looking in the mirror and think, I don't look bloody Scottish. Something is happening.
You get that, though, because I had a friend many years ago, I've not seen him for donkey's years. He was he was from Jamaica, and his name was Winston.
Yes.
And a lot of families in Jamaica at the time would call the kids Winston.
Yeah,
weren't they?
absolutely. And we had these names that we didn't identify with.
Yeah.
And I suppose when the Rastafari culture came along, it just taught you that maybe you're not Scottish after all. Find who you are. And it was through the Rastafari culture that I found that maybe I'm not Scottish after all. So I found Levi and called myself Levi Roots. And of course, Levi is a biblical name from the sort of Jewish religion.
You don't fancy presenting as a Scotsman with a kilt on?
Well, actually, I did went to Scotland to find the Grahams, which was my name in front of. They were bloodthirsty lot, those Grahams.
Now, we're talking about food and this cultural thing you've got going on in Jamaica where you can make the most amazing meals from nothing, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
And surely there's lessons to be learned in this country. I know you're involved in certain charities, Trust, etc., with food poverty, but surely there are lessons people can learn in this country from countries like Jamaica on how to make their money go further with the basic ingredients.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what my grandma was good at. And I suppose when I discovered, the sauce again, in my lifetime.
When you're talking about sauce,
yes,
Levi, are we talking
about
about sauce like this?
We are.
Which is your sauce?
Indeed, absolutely. And I think my grandma had a way of creating something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And sauces was a great thing that you could just do basic thing like potatoes, but you had a little bit of sauce on it, and then it becomes like a Sunday meal with everything.
I've just got to say though, Levi, looking at the camera there are other, according to my producer Greg here, there are other sauces available online and in supermarkets. That's just to give them a fair plug. I will be trying that later. But you're right, I know some of these poorer countries make the most basic meals taste nice, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. 'Cause it is about flavors. It's about creating flavors. And I suppose when you didn't have money in those days, you just needed something a little bit more than the bland food. Because we had all the potatoes and the bananas and everything. But once you had a bit of sauce in there, it was just like having a Sunday meals with all the flavors included in that.
So you brought over music from Jamaica. That's great, some great music. And you brought over the food, some great food. You talked about the racism when you came over. That must have been difficult as a young man, 11. I can't actually understand how that would be for you. How did you cope with that?
Well, I feel it more for my parents who had come before, who came to that, that time when it was no dogs, no blacks, no Irish.
Yeah.
And again, no one had prepared them for that because everybody had seen this letter from the Queen saying, come to England because there's jobs, help us to fix the country after the war.
Yeah.
But for them coming over, it was really a hard time for them. And I suppose when we came over as kids, for us to face, you turn left on one stage and everybody loves you, all these white kids want to know about ska music and the food and everything. But you turn right and the skinheads want to rip your head off. And I suppose it was that kind of, environment I came into. And you had to learn to fight, basically to survive. And I suppose that kept me down for a long time, that fighting attitude. And it wasn't until later on in my life that I found out I didn't need to fight because I had my grandma's recipes to turn to.
You got your food and your music, didn't you?
Absolutely, and that's how I actually eventually
let's try this.
Let's do it.
Now, if you poison me, I am insured, I've been told by GB News.
Yes, yeah.
I'm going to try a bit.
Go on, tell me if it's too spicy.
What is
barbecue sauce?
So this would go with what, chicken?
Almost anything. Almost anything at all.
It's got a kick to it.
It has. You're turning red slightly, Lee.
It's a cheeky little number. But I do recommend that on probably on some chicken. Hold on a minute. Oh, that's very good. That's excellent. Look, that's splendid.
Thank you, Lee.